Hi, I'm Leon Gorin, president of PEO Leadership, a peer-to-peer leadership advisory firm. We're an amazing community of CEOs, presidents, and senior executives. Ask yourself, are you learning as fast as the world is changing? It's time for Ontario business leaders to band together for counsel and support. It's time for you to tap into the business wisdom of our peer groups and unlock new ways to grow. I want you to come out of this COVID crisis a better leader and your organization ready for what's next. Take the first step at peo-leadership.com.
Okay, so I'm going to get started. I want to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon on our live webcast. I'm very excited. We've got Amy Deacon with us, who's a mental health therapist and has been working with the Cleveland Clinic Canada for the past 2 years. She also operates her own private practice with a focus on mental health, addiction, and trauma. She's a graduate from U of T and highly recommended by Michael Kessel, who is the president of Cleveland Clinic Canada. On the logistics, before I pass the baton over to Amy, a couple of things. One is, I'm going to ask, the way that the day may roll out here is the first 15 minutes Amy may speak to you as a group, and then after that, 15 to 20 minutes, she'll open it up for Q&A. And as we're doing Q&A, a couple of things. One is, you have a couple of ways to sort of put your questions out there. One is through the group chat. We'll be watching the group chat. And please put your name if your name's not there, if sometimes you're coming in on a phone. The second way is to raise your hand on these Zoom calls, and we'll watch that as well. And third, if you're not really feeling comfortable in terms of asking a personal question or something that's really, very personal to you, you can go directly to Amy in the group chat rather than going to everyone. Just pick Amy down on the tab, and you can ask the question directly to her, and she will just take that question. She won't identify you, and she'll go ahead and proceed to answer that question. The other thing I'd like to do is we'll do something a little differently. I know Kelly's going to post a poll in this room right now, just to gauge the room in terms of how we're feeling. The call is really about, the isolation that we're dealing with today, and some of it related to the mental stress, how it's impacting your family, and how it's really impacting you. So you'll see a poll come up, and I think Amy will use that as well in part of her conversation. So on that note, Amy, thank you again for joining us. I know you must be crazy these days, and the floor is yours.
My pleasure. I'm so happy to be here. So, sorry, Leon, do we want to complete the poll first and then go from there? What are we thinking?
Sure, that would be great if everyone can
take a minute or so.
So under polls on the bottom, if you're on a Zoom call, you'll see there are only two questions. Please take a moment to answer those two questions.
I'd like to be curious and get a sense of sort of where people's thought process is at, and just get a general sense of how people are feeling.
So Amy, will you be able to see the poll, or do I have Kelly sort of give you the results of where we're at?
I think Kelly would give us the results, but if we want, I can dive in, and then maybe towards the later on we can look at what the numbers looked like.
Okay, great, thanks.
So again, thank you guys for having me. My name is Amy, and I'm with the Cleveland Clinic Canada. I wish that we were meeting under slightly different circumstances. But in talking with Joanna and preparing for this, as Leon described, the presentation is actually quite brief. And so I'll just show you briefly what we're going to go over. Here we go. So I'm going to talk about the importance of acknowledging your anxiety and just acknowledging the stress that's come along as a result of the circumstances we're all facing. So point one, the importance of acknowledging your anxiety. Two, the most evidence-based, and they're very, very simple practices, but again, the most researched interventions for maintaining your mental health. And the way that I think about it is, for a lot of us, whether it's personal decisions, professional decisions, there's a lot that's we're at high risk of feeling cluttered. We're at high risk of lacking clarity just because we're pulled in so many different directions. So when I talk about mental health, we're talking about reducing anxiety, but we're also talking about increasing clarity so that the important decisions that we need to be making, we're making from a good headspace. And then the last point that I want to touch on are just a couple of strategies to maintain morale and again, kind of rally on staff's health and their mental health in the virtual workplace, just because it's quite different when we're not actually connected and seeing each other. And then thereafter, we'll do questions and answers, however you most feel comfortable. Okay. So number one, I take a deep breath as I say this. It's really, really important to acknowledge the anxiety, and everyone's anxiety looks a little bit different. And it's important to be aware and informed of what is yours about. So we've never experienced this. We've never experienced a pandemic and a bit of a financial crisis at the same time. And so people's feeling anxious is totally valid. It's totally, totally valid. And sometimes I think that we try to swallow it, and it's like, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And not that there's nothing wrong with being positive, but sometimes you become like a tea kettle and you're just swallowing and you're swallowing, and soon enough you're going to be boiling and boiling, and like nothing good is going to come out. So there's actually a lot of research to suggest the importance of pausing and just acknowledging that this is a really, really stressful time. That being said, there are two, Carol, I think it's Carol Decker. I think I'll research her name after, but she talks a lot about fixed mindset versus growth mindset. And so the growth mindset looks at this and says, this was not my plan A. And in fact, I'm moving on to plan B, C, D, and exploring plans E to F, and saying, the growth mindset says, I will grow through this. I do not like it. Again, this was not my plan A. This was not aligned with my goals for 2020, but like, part of my French, but it's almost like come hell or high water, I am going to grow through this. I will make it out on the other end. We will get through, whether it is as a person or a family or as a profession, or we will make it through. And sometimes, when I was making that note, I reminded myself, and I really don't mean this to sound hokey pokey, but I think at times like this, I'm reminded that hope is like a verb. It is a practice. It is an exercise. It is something that you are choosing to show up in life every single day and do the best that you can, given these very inconvenient circumstances. But I think that there's something that can be really honorable about that, and to remind yourself that you are making the choice to show up and to do your best. And I think we've got to give ourselves a little bit of grace. So in the midst of acknowledging your anxiety, I also don't want that to necessarily lead to panic attacks. And I think that we are bombarded with information. So I really, really recommend seeking specific updates from reliable news sources that you trust at specific times. My recommendation is, again, unless your job really depends on it, unless you need to know this first thing in the morning, don't check it first thing in the morning. I would much rather you spend that time making yourself a cup of coffee, not reading the newspaper, reading a book, doing a meditation, even checking your emails or doing a workout. But sometimes just starting that day with polls and numbers and crises on a cellular level, it's very, very unsettling. And so my sort of recommendation, again, if it's possible, I would encourage that you get that information almost as your workday is wrapping up, whether it's, and again, we're kind of in flux between our personal hours and our professional hours, but before you or after you shut down, and before you kind of check in with your family, or before you do your Skype call to your mom or whoever it is, maybe then check the news. But again, I wouldn't recommend first thing in the morning, nor last thing before bed. And then the last point in terms of acknowledging anxiety is really ensuring that you get the support that you need. So in my work with Cleveland Clinic Canada, I have the blessing of working with some really, really amazing executives and people in leadership positions. And one of the research findings that a lot of people aren't aware of is that people in leadership positions and in executive positions have a much higher likelihood of depression. I think it's they're 52% more likely. And there's a bunch of theories about why this is, but one of the theories is that when people are sort of the face of their brand and they represent their company, they have to maintain their composure. They have to stay strong, they have to stay positive, they have to maintain hope, and that's fine. That's fine, so long as you have a place to unravel. So whether that is with your partner or your best friend, an executive coach, your therapist, whatever, but we are not robots. And so all of us need space to unravel. And again, it doesn't mean that you stay stuck, that you stay stuck in despair, but you just need space to feel the way that you feel. And so Kelly has just let me know that she has the results of the poll. So I think she's just going to share those for a second and then we'll move on. Okay. So how concerned are you about COVID? 44%, I feel I have things under control and I'm prepared in this situation. 38%, I think we should be doing more. I'm moderately concerned. 19%, this is a very serious situation that is out of control. I'm severely concerned. From a mental health perspective, how are you feeling? I am fine. 13%. I am mildly anxious or stressed. 56%. I am moderately anxious or stressed. 25%. I'm severely stressed or anxious. Okay, thank you guys so much for sharing. And Kelly and Leon and Joanna, thank you guys so much for thinking of those questions. That's fantastic. Okay, so I want to jump back to some strategies, and again, most evidence-based interventions that you can do on your own to reduce the stress, to reduce the anxiety, to help you sleep better, all of that. So number one, and whenever I say this to my clients, they all roll their eyes at me and I think they want to pinch me, but they don't because they're respectful. Meditation. And so I know that this is not everybody's cup of tea. It really, really is a practice, but it's just the discipline, especially when so many of us are living right now in the future. When will this end? When will I get back to work? When will staff get back to work? Like and none of, like, I can't fault anybody for that, but there's not a lot of power and there's not a lot of control in what isn't in our present moment. And that's what meditation helps us to strengthen, is our relationship with the present and saying, okay, so I don't have control, but I have choice. So with the choices that I have, what are the best ones that I could make? Research also suggests that meditation can actually be, it is as effective as an antidepressant medication. And I am all for medication, but I just think if medication is necessary, but we can also do meditation, anything that we can do to get our headspace right, I think it should be explored. There are two apps that are really well known for this, and one is Calm, the other is Headspace. And I think that Headspace is offering like a free trial right now. I think that's worth exploring. The other one is reducing alcohol consumption, which again, some people want to pinch me when I say, and I don't blame them. So for men, we're trying to not exceed, like 12 to 15 drinks a week. And for women, we're looking at not exceeding, 10 to 12 drinks a week. Especially, I'm going to underscore, if you're having difficulty sleeping. So if you find that you're waking up around 2 or 3 a.m. and you're like alert, awake, one of the first things that we recommend is cutting out alcohol and just seeing if it makes a difference. Your sleep matters so much. It's when the toxins are cleared from your brain. You think better, you're more clear, you're emotionally more stable the next day. So we just want to be mindful of that. And again, limiting the news, your social media consumption. Again, depending on your work, but if on your phone, you get updates from like, I don't know, the Washington Post and the Toronto Star and the Globe and Mail and CNN, and your phone is blowing up with updates, I would silence that so quickly. Sort of my rule of thumb is, so what I was saying earlier, when I check the news, I check it around 4:30, and I probably listen to it for 6 minutes, and then I turn it off, because all I want to know is, do I have to do anything differently? Is there any information that I need to know to protect myself, to protect my family, and to better serve my community? So, the other day, Toronto parks are closed. I need to know that. I have kids. There's if there's blood donations to be made, if there's, financial donations to be made, I want to know that. And the rest of it, I know it can sound crass, but if I can't be of service right now, it's overwhelming, and it actually shuts me down from the places where I can be of service, such as with my work and during, conversations like this. Did I miss something? I did. Sorry. Okay. So this is another thing. So yes, we talked about prioritizing sleep, and I know this might be a stretch, but I would really, really encourage, if people are able to aim for 7 or 8 hours, like that's ideal. If that seems so unrealistic, let's go for 6 or 7. Whether we're looking at adding a melatonin to help us fall asleep, or magnesium to help you stay asleep, sleepy teas. You can discuss it with your doctor or your pharmacy to see like what dosage is appropriate. But anything, doing a meditation before sleep. That Calm app has like storybooks before you go to bed with Matthew McConaughey lulling you to sleep. It's lovely. Exercise, again, very, very effective, much like the meditation. I would recommend 20 to 30 minutes a day. And this doesn't have to be anything wild, but going outside, getting fresh air, again, so long as you're not buddied up with a stranger, you're like, the fresh air, it's so important for your mental health right now. Getting the sunshine as well. And then my first point, which is ironically not my last point, but creating and maintaining your personal and working hours. And I think that that's very messy, and I know it's a tall order, but I think that people need to be on the same page. So, and it might change day to day, but for your staff to know when your on hours are, and even for your family to know when your work hours are, so that you feel like you at least have the time and space to get into a rhythm and a groove and a bit of a flow. And then also when you're off, that you're not checking your emails, and you do have time to connect, whether it's with family in person or online or friends online or whatever it may be. But, and if it's possible, depending on your space, I would really, really recommend, don't bring work into the bedroom. Like, have literally, even if it's a corner, have a space that's just for your work, where your computer is set up or whatever it may be, but just to have sort of that separateness. I think it's important. And again, I know it's not easy to do right now. Okay. And then the last thing that I wanted to discuss was sort of maintaining morale in the virtual workspace. If you guys have done this already, great. If you haven't, I would really, really recommend it. I think that this is such a powerful opportunity for people to connect with their staff on such a deep and meaningful level. And so encouraging people to take care of themselves. When employers actually put that language out there and say to their staff, we care about you, we want you to be doing well, the hour that you used to spend commuting, or the half hour that you would spend commuting, consider doing a meditation, consider doing a gratitude practice, consider exercising. Just to know that people care means so much right now. There are moms that feel overwhelmed with like juggling kids at home. There are single people that feel so isolated right now. There are dads that are like pulling out their hairs, feeling like they can't get enough work done. There are people that are concerned about the health of their parents. And I think if you are in a position of leadership, to be able to reach out and to say, I see you, I hear you, I care, I cannot tell you how powerful that is. So please consider doing that if you haven't done it already. And with that, if you guys do have EAP services, maybe connecting them with that. I know a lot of workplaces are getting very creative. So there's oopsies, hold on. No, come back. Yes, like people are getting really, really creative. So they're doing like virtual coffee breaks. Like at 10:30, everybody logs on, and I mean, their dog is barking in the background and their kids are running around. a hot mess, but it's sort of this reminder that we're in it together and we're not alone. And I think people really, really need that. So, and there's also, I know some workplaces that are doing meditation sessions. So maybe it's like reflective Fridays or mindful Mondays or something like that, where at noon there's, you know, a 10-15 minute meditation and then just a discussion. Because again, I can't emphasize enough that I really believe that sort of the foundation of our mental health and our health overall right now, I'm biased because I'm focused on the mental health, but it's sort of our platform in terms of how we are going to launch into the next steps and next decisions as it pertains to our personal lives and our professional lives. And I fundamentally believe we are all doing the best that we can, and to just give yourself, just be really gracious with yourself and others. And then last slide, and then we'll open this up. So I know I was speaking to somebody and they said that, you know, the first couple of weeks when this first came over, when everything shut down, there was like a bazillion meetings. And I think that in some ways it can be overwhelming, but I think that in some ways we're almost like white knuckling, and we just want to make sure that we're still on the same page and that the communication is open. So get creative, look at video conferencing, whether it's Zoom or even if we're doing FaceTime or whatever it may be, but to maintain that that professional dialogue, and also knowing there's no blueprint for this. We've never experienced this, and so we don't even have sort of like best practices for how you deal with the pandemic and a bit of a financial crisis at the same time. So we have to be having weekly feedback sessions. What's going well? What's not? Where are we excelling? And where are things brutal? And that's where we need to be investing our energy, or that's what we need to cut, whatever it may be. I think that there's a book by Ben Horowitz, and it's called The Hard Thing About Hard Things. And he talks about the wartime leader and the peacetime leader. And the peacetime leader, it's like when things are good and things are gravy, there's like a spaciousness and almost like a generosity that we can extend to others. But when we're in war times, which many people would argue we are right now, leaders have to be like a little bit more cutthroat and like, what do we need to focus on? Where do we need to excel? And not to be afraid of leaning into that. And weekly feedback sessions can really, really help clarify what's priority for business. And then my last comment is prioritizing quality over quantity. So like the 8 to 5 hours, or like the 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. or the 9 to whatever the hours were, we have to let that go. So if your staff are able to, you know, grind out from 9 to 11 and then 1:30 to 3:30 and then, you know, 7:30 to 10, so long as the work is getting done, so long as it's quality, that needs to be our focus right now. I think that people are being, again, stretched so much. There's no schools, there's no community centers. We can't even get like a ton of family to come in and help support us right now. So I think that we just need to be really graceful and extending understanding and flexibility to others. Again, how work gets done, I think if we're able to provide people with like trust and autonomy to get that done, perfect. Quality matters right now. The quantity and how that gets that done, I feel like we need to just sort of like let go of those reins a little bit. And I think that can really help to sort of reduce, you know, our stress levels. So those are my thoughts. That's what I put together. Friends, do we have questions? Do we have concerns? Do you disagree? Do you want to bite back on something? I am open to anything and everything.
Before we head into the Q&A portion of this webcast, first, a brief note about PEO Leadership from one of our members.
At PEO Leadership, I'm surrounded by other business leaders who challenge me to become better.
Les Mandelbaum, founder and CEO of Umbra.
Leaders really need to step outside their world and get new perspectives.
PEO Leadership is more than peer-to-peer advisory. It's a community of top executives with global experience.
Our retail landscape is rapidly changing. PEO Leadership has been vital in helping us navigate through this.
The time to step up and lead is now. Go to peo-leadership.com.
Thank you, Amy. So again, for the questions, please put them up in the group chat. You can raise your hand as a participant, or you can go directly to Amy.
And sorry, I'm just saying, thank you. Yeah, Mike, I like Mike. Yeah. We're all in this together, 100%. And Jeff's comment about, I've heard that too, that Office 365 is a really good platform for meeting and collaborating. I've never used that though. I really should look at it.
That's good. Amy, maybe I'll kick it off.
Sure.
I've been sitting on so many different advisory board calls over the last 10 days. And one of the biggest things I'm noticing is the overload. Like people, the burden on the leaders here is just absolutely massive. People are working 12, 14, 16 hours a day. You're right. Are they sleeping? They're probably thinking about this stuff. I'm really worried about the burnout piece of it. It sort of contradicts with leadership, because at this point in time, we need to lead, we need to role model, and you need to be the face of the business going forward. But you can see it's going to collapse. I know you've got a bunch of advice. How do we rewire our mindset as leaders to actually get good at establishing this type of routine and not losing that ability to roll, to be in front of our employees or stakeholders, and to show them that we're still into pushing forward with great leadership.
Oh my goodness gracious. You said so many things that are important.
Sorry.
Okay. So no, don't apologize. Oh my goodness gracious. Okay. So there's a couple of things. So actually, one question. Tell me from your perspective, just because you've had so much contact, what do you think? Can you describe for me the stress and the anxiety, like and the overload? Could you just give me a bit more meat on that?
So it's a combination of a little bit of what you've talked about, but when we think about it from a leadership perspective, we've just gone through layoffs, many of us, in the first week. We moved fast on a lot of the stuff. We're pumping out information totally, not just to employees, but to every stakeholder, every customer. Your mind never gets a chance to relax right now. You're always preparing for the next thing. You're taking calls from suppliers, from vendors, from everyone at all hours of the night. And you need to be there. Like, there is no choice as a leader. So when I listen to these calls and I'm there, I can see how it's wearing on people just through how they're communicating and how they're talking. So my job is to try and, how do I get them into a routine? How do I show them that it's not sustainable in a sense, but I don't want them to lose their leadership role and position.
Okay. So, oh my, thank you so much for sharing that. Because I don't think we're in a sprint right now. And I think we're in a marathon. So we need to fuel up. Leaders need to fuel up. And this is, what I'm going to share with you is not the most happy, positive, but I struggle with anything other than honesty. So I think about, what's the alternative? What's the alternative if the leader burns himself out? What's the alternative because right now, I think even socially, we're in a state of reaction. We are not responding clearly. It's almost like we're bulls in china shops. And as a leader, that's not a good look. You don't want to be a bull in a china shop. I understand that that you have to be responsive, and I can only imagine the overwhelm of the sheer number of work and all the things that you need to get done. But I really, really wonder, what's the alternative? Because burnout is a really real thing. What if that leader shuts down mentally, emotionally, physically? What happens then? Who's left picking up the pieces? And that's a very, very real consequence. I've seen that happen. And what I'm asking, selfishly, what I am asking is, could people consider carving out, I would say, 40 minutes for themselves? 40 minutes for themselves. And in that 40 minutes where you are doing a 20-minute walk, you are having a 10-minute coffee by yourself, and whether you're doing 10 minutes of meditation or gratitude, but just with this perspective of, I have to fuel up, because what is the alternative? And I know that sounds grim, but when we're looking at equipping leaders with the strength so that they can sustain this marathon, I think also, and I wonder, Leon, if things will shift in the coming weeks as we see that because I mean, like the emails that have been going out and the like the blast, like it's very, very intense. But as this becomes our norm, I almost wonder if that will kind of, I'm hoping it will slow a little bit, but if people will understand that rate that we were going at the first week, it's not sustainable. And so people are going to have to wait half an hour till we get back to them. People are going to have to wait an hour if it's 2 a.m, unless literally our lives depend on it. We will get back to it at 8 a.m. when we log on. Like again, and I think that people know their work well enough to know what they can stretch themselves for and what they can't. But again, if there's not that fundamental piece of health, will they be there? Will they even be in that leadership position to like navigate us through this journey in 2 weeks?
That's great.
Does that make sense? I know. I'm sorry. I wish I had a bit of a nicer.
No, it was great.
A nicer answer. Yeah.
Bob, I'm going to go to you. I know you put a question into the chat. If you want to come off your mute, come on off mute and go ahead and ask the question.
There we go. Can you hear me?
I can.
Yes.
Hi, Bob.
Yeah, hello. This is excellent. I'm with an organization called CEO Global Network, and we had a call earlier today, and we got talking about this whole notion of resilient leadership.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering off the top, what sort of elements come to mind, Amy, of a resilient leader? What are some of those qualities in these times?
I think about Jim Collins. It's Jim Collins, right? From Good to Great.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, like who has time to just read a bunch of books right now? You know, get Ben Horowitz and Jim Collins. But I think about, and you know what, Bob, I'm going to be really honest. I think time will tell. My recommendations are sort of what we know right now. But I think that again, this was nobody's plan A. I think that staying grounded and staying calm matters more than ever. And so again, internally, we can all be going a little bit crazy, and we can send that, you know, have our proper space for that. But in terms of a resilient leader, I think you're looking at honesty. I think that you're looking and honesty as in, again, kind of going back to that first point about acknowledging the anxiety that exists. I think that you're looking at staying grounded and staying calm. And as a leader, you have a choice. You could feed into sort of the fear and say, this is the most terrible thing in the world. We're never going to recuperate. Like, everybody's like doomed. Like, that's one option. That's not great leadership. Or you could say, listen, guys, even if our professional careers are going to end, like seriously, like even if jobs are off the table, personally, we will stay in touch. And when we recover, when we go through this as a collective, we will go through hand in hand. And so I think so there's the honesty, there's the staying calm and grounded and focused, and also calm and focused on what's priority right now. Like for staff, understanding what are the priorities for our business right now, it can be really, really helpful. Extending grace, and then again, just building on the fact that this is such, like, we're all in this. And so building on our sense of community, and again, quite seriously, like there are layoffs every single day. I think that people are going to understand that's part of the norm. Like, that's nobody's plan A. But as leaders, we can still care for people. We can still be there for people. We can still say, like, we will see you through this, and we will see you through the other side of this. Those are my recommendations. I'm curious if anything else comes up for other people.
No, thanks, Amy. That was great.
Yeah.
Amy, it's Bob again. Can I just add a couple of others and
please,
reaction by anyone? Some other thoughts that we had was these resilient leaders. Clarity is very, very important.
100%.
And you touched on it a little bit with the priorities, but so is consistency. Like, tomorrow isn't a different priority or a different way of thinking about it. And that the leader also remain within themselves vulnerable. Not paralyzed, not fearful, just vulnerable.
Yeah. So, and again, no blueprint, but there are two comments. So one, in terms of consistency, yes, I think that consistency matters, but I think that we're also working with very inconsistent times. And so whether that's what's happening economically, in terms of whether that's happening in terms of the COVID itself, and so there's consistency, but we also don't, if something is no longer, if something is no longer working, I think that we have to like own that, right? Like even Labatt, they're not producing beer right now. Like they had to let that go, and they're making hand sanitizer. So there's consistency, but I think that we're also at it. We're in a very like inconsistent time, and I think that vulnerability matters. But what was the word that you used? Vulnerable, but not
is not paralyzed.
Yeah.
Not anxious to the point of indecision. And
yes.
You got to be human. And I think it takes some of the stress off the leader if they can let a little bit of the air out of the balloon as they go.
100%. I remember somebody told me that they like for every one of their meetings with their direct reports, they took up space for a second. They started and they just said, "This is brutal." And that was their only sentence. And it was sort of their way of saying, the human in me recognizes the magnitude of this, and we're not alone in feeling overwhelmed. Now let's get down to business and figure out what we're going to do next.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks for joining, Bob. Thanks for joining a PEO leadership call. It's good to have you guys here as well. I'm going to go we're looking for the next question. So again, we got an open mic here. And as we sort of look for that second question, just on the resilience thing, and I think you guys touched on it as well. I think the ability to understand during this stress and the time, this crisis, is the fear we are going to make mistakes, and you're going to make mistakes as you lead through these times. And I think the transparency and even the vulnerability to admit and to change direction is a big thing and is admired, and not to be, sometimes we make mistakes, it hurts, your gut turns inward. But at this point in time, in this type of crisis, it's also an admirable trait of a leader to come forward and say, you know what, I took the wrong direction, I'm moving in this direction. And it also provides a much more calming impact.
Yeah. And there's just a couple of other questions that I'm seeing.
Perfect.
So one is about supporting others who are anxious. This is like a really, really big one. So I'm going to be such a therapist. I'm so annoying. I'm so sorry, guys. So, you guys, I'm sure you've heard this example a million times before about when you're on the airplane and you have to put on your own mask before even saving your child. It's the exact same thing. So I will tell you something that I do for myself. And if you guys want to, anyways, if I know that I'm about to connect with somebody that is highly, highly anxious, like a friend or family member, before I do it, I will take a minute, I will breathe, and I will check in with myself, and I will literally ask myself, Amy, do you have the energy to do this? And if my answer is no, I am putting down the phone. If I don't have the energy to extend the support, to be on the phone and to listen to like the new numbers and the new statistics, I'm not making the call. Because, and again, it can sound, I know that it sounds a bit selfish, but my rationale behind it is that if I can't call that person and support them with a whole heart, I'd rather not do it at all. I'd rather show up for that person when I have the bandwidth and when I have the energy to listen and to make suggestions. But, I think that, even like the recommendations that we made today, it's the type of thing that you can like, we can lead the horse to water, but we can't force them to drink. We can tell people, the importance of like taking care of themselves, of getting fresh air, getting exercise, doing meditation, making sure that they're getting social interaction, that even though we're, socially distancing, we're not socially isolated. So we can make those recommendations. But again, whenever somebody talks to me about how do I support somebody that's really anxious, I always recommend please check in with yourself first and see if you have the bandwidth and the energy to be there for that person. The other thing about supporting, so this was the other question, like how do you support kids at home? And I mean, we should just do like a group chat about that one and, think of our best ways. But as a parent, like kids don't care if you have a bandwidth. Calling a friend who's maybe anxious, that's a bit more of a choice. the people in your home, we have a responsibility to take care of them. So people, I think, are doing their best to get creative. I'm curious, like, what are the ages of the kids that we're dealing with? I know that there's some schools that are trying to do courses online. I know that Scholastics is offering courses online. There's exercise courses that are online. I know friends that are, doing Zoom chats where they can connect with their classmates and different things like that. But I think as parents, grandparents, we have to be easy on ourselves. There are going to be days where TV is their best friend. And is it our best parenting moment? No. Again, was this our plan A? No. Are there moments where we snap and we're maybe like we're lacking some patience? Yes. And the best that we can do is feed ourselves and try to do better the next day. But I also think that with kids, there's a real benefit in talking about this and just saying, and using age appropriate language depending on how old they are, but to say, there's an illness and there are scientists that are trying to figure out how to cure it. And so until they can cure it, the best thing that we can do as a society is to reduce our risk of infecting each other. And so that's why we have to stay at home, and that's why we have to limit our time outdoors or whatever it may be. And again, don't be afraid of acknowledging your kid's anxiety and saying, it sucks. Like, this isn't an easy time. And so as a family, like, what would be fun? Like, would you guys want to do board games? Would you guys want to work out together? Would you guys want to watch, like, have movie nights together? Like, I think that we're kind of like forgetting the playbook and what, like, perfect parenting looks like. I don't even know what that looks like anyways on a good day, let alone on this day. So just, I think, keep your kids a part of the conversation, but very similarly to maintaining that open dialogue with your staff. Do the same with your kids. How's it going? How was this week? What did we do well? What did we not do well? And even, for parents to be able to express, when we're working, we need things to be a little bit quieter, if that's possible. Like, if your kid isn't 1 and 3 year old, like mine are, but like if they're older, to say, or you guys didn't clean up, and that was like a real source of frustration. Like, we need to work together, and to have sort of those feedback sessions. We have to learn to, somebody told me, they're like, if COVID-19 doesn't destroy me, she was like, my family, all this time with me alone with my family will. So I think it's testing all of our patience and all of our limits, but where we can use humor and communication, like, let's show up. Are there any other questions? I'm just taking a look.
Amy, maybe I'll ask you another question just
Yeah.
from the kids' side.
Yeah.
Are there any indicators or areas that we should take notice of when you start noticing your kids changing behaviors? Or there's, everyone's worried and it's already started. We don't want to talk about it, but in terms of the suicide rates are going to increase massively because of this isolation. And they've already started to trend. What should we be watching with our younger kids? So take kids between 2 and 18 years old, or 4 and 18 years old, where they start to understand. Are there indicators that we should be clued into around these kids that are not properly?
Yeah. So usually, yeah. Oh, sorry, that like hit my heart. You're looking for abnormal behavior. And so abnormal, not necessarily being that your child is acting like demonstrating any symptoms of like psychosis, not that, but abnormal for your kid. So if your child is normally like really chatty, socially engaged, connected, and they go into like isolation and withdrawing and not wanting to connect, I would be curious as a parent. And there's a difference between being curious and staging a full-on intervention. You might very well, and I'm saying you like as a group, you might very well not need to stage a full-on intervention, but you do need to be curious. and also understanding the difference between sadness and depression. So right now, a lot of us are sad with what's going on. We're sad. A lot of us are again, the difference between feeling anxious and feeling nervous, and then having full-blown panic attacks and needing to make an appointment with a doctor. So if I would look for changes in behavior, whether there's withdrawal, whether there's like outbursts, whether the person just almost like it feels like disjointed, I would explore it. I would also give them a grace period. So I was speaking with somebody earlier that was saying that their younger child is like throwing temper tantrums like crazy. That's kind of to be expected. Like that's sort of part of this transition. I would say to if and so again, that's for a child. I would give a grace period of about like 2 weeks. And if after that things are persisting and they're not getting better, I wouldn't even hesitate to make a doctor's appointment now, so that if things don't improve, you can have the input of their doctor to say, like, we need to put a plan in place. Like whether that's counseling, whether that's like an online support group, whether that's depending on their age, but if it's an appropriate time for like a medication or something like that, because we also have like a lot of adult children that are living at home right now. But I would not shy away from those conversations. And I think that as parents, sometimes when we know something is off and we ask, and it's like, you know, if as soon as the kid starts to say, I feel scared, or I feel sad, or I feel lonely, as parents, we can almost jump in and try to fix it. And it's like, no, don't feel that way. Or like, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Don't shut down your kids' feelings. The same way that we as adults need our place to kind of unravel, they need their space too. And they don't have their outlets like they did before. So parents have to like really show up and be like, and if the kid starts to say, you know, I'm anxious about this, and what about my school year? What if I don't get to go to, you know, university or whatever? Tell me more. That must be really, really scary. Keep going, and just let them have their space. And I cannot tell you how many teenagers find such relief in just being heard.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Anyone else with some questions, please raise your hand, or again in the group chat, or directly to Amy if anybody's got anything. We got a bit of a quiet bunch here. I have to keep coming up with questions here.
Leon, I got one for you.
Great, go ahead.
It's Bob Blank again. I think you guys might know John Danson, ex of Cleveland Clinic. Does that ring a bell?
I don't.
I do. He's no longer with Cleveland Clinic, but
okay.
He was there for a few years.
Now, I'll tell you why I bring up his name. He has got the absolute kind of gut feeling understanding of the importance of humor that came up earlier.
Yeah.
And boy, you know, the more we can flip an email or something to anyone to stay in touch with some people, and it doesn't always have to be just on business. It can be, I just saw one that said, early examples of social distancing, and it's got a Stanley Cup in one corner and a Toronto Maple Leaf logo in the other corner.
Love it. Oh my goodness.
And so what I meant by that is just that kind of take a moment just to have a little levity, share it with other people, can be real quick, and we should not lose our sense of humor here.
I love that. And Bob, I would add to that, you know, my mother-in-law she's a business beast. She is a businesswoman. She has no time for meditation or anything like that. But I've forced her to do a gratitude practice, and it literally takes 10 seconds, but you grab a pad of paper and you just mark down 2 or 3 things that you were genuinely grateful for that day. And I am telling you, it is like the smallest things. It is like, the cup of coffee that you had with your partner, or like the silly joke that your kid made, or the email that you got with like the Stanley Cup on one side and the Leafs on the other. But just, again, we're so bombarded right now with everything that could go wrong and everything that is wrong, that we really, really need to, in honing our focus and finessing our focus and being able to be clear about what's priority, almost giving that dose of positivity and gratitude to your brain can chemically be so grounding in your body. If you haven't done it, I would dare you to try it for 5 days and tell me that you do not benefit from it. Anybody that I've forced to do it always finds a benefit in it.
That's great. Thank you, Amy.
So I got one more question. Is that okay, Leon?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So how do we talk to a family member or spouse that is shutting down and getting overwhelmed by the entire situation? And I think that's really, really common. So I would make sure, number one, that you have the bandwidth to really actually even to engage in the conversation. I know, even if it's our partner and our spouse, but I think that the best thing that you can do, whether you're by yourself, whether you're in a partnership, whether you are in a family, is to take care of yourself. And I swear this is not a cop-out, but like to make sure that you have energy, to make sure that you are sleeping, to make sure that you are eating well, because we are sort of setting you up for disaster. We are not setting you up for success. We're not setting you up for a successful conversation to be of support to a partner, to a family member, if you're running on empty. Like that conversation isn't going to go well. So the best thing that you can do is ground yourself, clear head. And again, I know that that's a stretch right now. And then in terms of supporting another person, I'd be tempted to kind of go through a little bit of what we discussed today in terms of saying, one, acknowledging their anxiety and saying, I see this, even if the person is shutting down, saying, I get the sense that this is really affecting you, and I'm so sorry. You're not sorry for COVID. Nobody did this, but like the human in you is sorry for the human in them, and sorry for the discomfort and the stretch and the overwhelm that this is creating. And especially if it's an adult family member, or if it's or if it's your spouse, it's your partner, to say, how do we get through this together? What do you need? How can I be of support to you? And and depending if the person has the bandwidth, but here are some ways that you can be of support to me. And so, and I think that structure can really help families right now, like knowing when dad's on time is what his work hours and mom's work hours, and then when's together time. I know it might sound like a stretch, but just the other day I had realized that it'd probably been 3 weeks since my husband and I sat down and said, how are you? Like, how is life going for you? So tomorrow night, Saturday night, we have a date. After the girls are in bed, we have a date to probably do absolutely nothing except for have a glass of red wine and sit down and say, how are you doing? And just make space. But I think that the shutting down is just indicative of how overwhelmed we feel, and not to take that personally.
Thank you, Amy.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, if not, Amy, can I ask the last question? And
Of course.
Really kind of a closer a little bit too.
Yeah.
But if this goes on for months,
yep.
and we really do believe it will go on for at least another 2 months until we with the peak and stuff.
Yeah.
Is there anything special or any additional advice you'd give to us? Because again, it's unprecedented times.
Yeah.
You've gone through, I know you've covered a lot of the hints and ideas around that, but anything else, that one thing that stands out in your mind that, hey, we're here for 2 months. This is what you really want to think about doing on top of everything.
There's one thing that really jumps out to me. So it's, so number one, to know that self-care is not self-indulgent. When I talk about meditation and gratitude and exercising, it's not self-indulgent. This is to save your sanity. This is so that you can get through the next stretch. Again, if that's 2 months, with clarity and to feel like you know how to ground yourself. So you need to really know yourself. So that would be almost my giveaway to people, is really know what you need. So if running isn't your thing, maybe listening to rock music is. If that's not your thing, maybe it's cooking, maybe it's baking, maybe it's, watching a fun show on Netflix. But know what you need to fuel you. Nobody can give that to you. And so as leaders of businesses, of families, we need to show up like never before. And we can't show up looking to our left and right and saying, how am I going to feel better about this? We need to provide that to ourselves unapologetically, understanding that the way that will translate into our family and our personal and our professional lives will be worth its weight in gold. So take a second, pause, and say, what do I need? Is it humor? Is it a therapist? Is it journaling? Is it what do I need to be able to sustain this marathon and get it in practice now? Don't wait. Don't wait for things to become crisis. And Leon, just one other thing that I wanted to just share, in case, I think that maybe Talia discussed this yesterday, but just a reminder that Cleveland Clinic Canada is offering to PEO members and their families the Express Care Online. So, to either schedule an appointment with a nurse practitioner for 10 minutes if there are concerns going on. It's such a great service, and just, I think, really beneficial to people at this time.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Amy, so much for being with us today for the past.
My pleasure.
Your insights, really, really helpful, and I'm sure a lot of people have taken a number of your thoughts away, and will start to execute on a bunch of the stuff. For all of everybody in the room, this is going to be the end of the call. Someone asked around, do we run this, calls similar to this on a weekly basis? We do. We cover really 5 things: business, health, wealth, family, and career. And so you'll see us rotating between, this week was very much Cleveland Clinic in terms of the workplace, and now for you personally, the week before we talked around wealth and the uncertainty and volatility in the markets and where we're going. We'll probably follow up next week with that as well, and a number of different business initiatives. So I hope to see you all again in the coming weeks, and I wish you to be safe and healthy and hunker down. Thank
you so much, everybody, for joining the conversation, and Leon and Joanna and Kelly for facilitating. Thank you guys so much.
And thank you, Cleveland Clinic.
Our pleasure.
All right, that concludes our meeting today. Thank you.
Take care, guys.
You will.